2007, I began to realize that cloud computing was going to be something real. I had an opportunity to work on both N1 and Network.com at Sun, and I had a chance to see that the infrastructures were getting ready to be able to carry enterprise workload. But there was a big gap between what the clouds were and what the enterprises needed. So I left Sun in January of 2008 to start working with the local venture firm, Matrix Partners, to incubate the idea of CloudSwitch. David Skok there introduced me to Ellen Rubin, who's my co-founder, who had just come off a successful IPO of a company called Netezza. Together we formed a great team. She had the ability to get a meeting with just about anyone, and so we went out to all sorts of different types of enterprises to be able to figure out really, how to mesh. What are the problems that the enterprises are seeing, and what we could do to actually help them. We solve kind of the four primary barriers to cloud computing, or enterprise adoption of cloud computing. And so the first is really a seamless extension of the existing data center. So securely extend the behind the firewall out into the clouds. The second barrier that we're really focused on is not requiring changes to your underlying applications. And this was really key because if it costs a lot of money to get the cost savings, then you actually don't get anything out of cloud computing. And so what we did is we really approached it from a perspective that you don't change anything about your application, your operating system, really anything about your environment, but you can take advantage of the cost, the scalability, the flexibility provided by cloud computing. And so the third tenet in that is, given that we have a seamless integration with the data center, you haven't changed anything, that means that your existing tools, your infrastructure, your processes work against the cloud just as if the applications and the servers were in your data center. And finally, just to wrap it all up, it was something that surprised us a little bit in the early days, but the customers were worried about cloud lock-in. And the idea that, if you decided to pick a cloud, that you do a lot of work around integrating with that cloud, and that if you didn't like the decision, or another cloud came along with better capabilities or a different value prop, that you'd have to redo all of the work. So those four things were really what CloudSwitch is founded upon. And it's the idea of being able to integrate with cloud without having to be changing everything about what you're doing. The foundation of our technology is really what we call cloud isolation. And what this is, it's a layer that we've built that really protects the user's environment from the cloud provider. Now it seems kind of funny, how much do you trust your cloud provider? But really what this layer is about is two things. One is transparency. And so the idea that we can preserve your environments exactly, even as we go across hypervisors. So one of the things we do today, and people think, wow, that's kind of magic, is we'll take things from a VMware environment and run them in Amazon. So we've gone from VMware's hypervisor to a Xen hypervisor, no changes, okay? We automate that entire process. And so the power of our technology then is that we can provide that pure environment translation, okay? You can do exactly what you were doing in your data center. So how does this really represent itself? Well, there's a couple things. You have the ability to say, keep my MAC addresses, keep my IP addresses, keep my storage controllers, really keep my environment exactly as it was, even though I'm running in a different environment. And at the same time, while we're doing that, we have the ability to encrypt all of the storage, all of the networking. Basically, the entire environment is encapsulated within the cloud provider. A development environment, which was a Siebel development environment, so end to end, and we push that into the cloud. And that's one of those things you kind of sit back and you go, oh my God, why would you ever do such a thing? It was a powerful use case for them because they were having to buy and maintain multiple lanes of this development environment for making their changes and updates and really updating their entire environment. And the idea of having to do hardware refresh cycles for something that was really needed for what they wanted to do, but it wasn't consistently like they needed it 24/7 for years on end. And so by giving them the freedom to bring up the development environment, to do all their work, their modifications, their upgrades to the system, and then bring it back to the data center and transition into their production was a really kind of cool use case for them. It really helped them save money and realize that they can actually use the cloud in their day-to-day operations. just for existing applications. I keep saying existing or legacy applications. And really, I think the other point of, CloudSwitch is that if you decide to, invest in cloudifying applications, and I hate to say that word, but designed for the cloud infrastructure, designed for scalability, designed for fault tolerance in your application layer, kind of great, right? Feel free to do that. But as soon as you start thinking about the other things that you need to support it, you're left with kind of two options. One is to stretch everything back to your application, stretch everything back to your data center, and that works for some applications and won't work for others. And so what we found was that there are a few applications that can tolerate, a big chunk of latency added into their interactions. But what we really want to do is recommend to people to take as much of the application and push it to the cloud, because then you get data center-like connectivity, you get LAN connectivity. And if you don't deal with some of these fundamental issues, that's not possible. You're really stuck with the notion of this is out here, and if I do want to get to my internal databases or into these infrastructure services, I'm going to have to backhaul. And so by enabling you to take third-party applications, existing applications, infrastructure components, and push them into cloud, you have the ability now to kind of pick and choose where you innovate.